All right, today we're jumping into a story from ancient Rome that is, well, it's strange, it's beautiful, and honestly, it's a little unsettling. And what's wild is that this 2,000-year-old myth has so much to say about how we think about our own identities right now. Okay, let's kick things off with this quote because it just cuts right to the chase, you know? We are so obsessed with defining what's normal, especially when it comes to identity. But here's the thing. What if that whole idea of normal, this simple, fixed thing, is actually the biggest myth of all? I mean, just think about it. It's the first question, right? The very first question we ask about a new person. And right away, we're trying to put them in one of two boxes. That one choice, boy or girl, it sets up a whole lifetime of expectations. But we all know, deep down, that real life is way, way more complicated than that. So where do we even begin to unpack these huge assumptions? Well, there's this really useful tool called queer theory. And look, don't let the name intimidate you. We're not going to get bogged down in academic speak. Think of it more like a new pair of glasses, a different lens for seeing the world, and for taking a fresh look at some really old stories. Basically, at its heart, queer theory is all about celebrating difference. It pushes back hard on this idea that our biology dictates our destiny. It's much more interested in the idea of becoming, this fluid, ongoing process, instead of being stuck in some fixed state of being. It's all about making room for all the identities that just don't fit into those neat little boxes. And this gets us to some of the big, common sense ideas that queer theory really puts under the microscope. The scholar Eve Kosofsky-Sedgwick laid out how our culture just kind of assumes a few things, like everyone has a sexuality that defines them, that it's always aimed at one kind of person, and that it never ever changes. But is that really true for everyone? Queer theory says, hey, maybe we should question. Okay, so this leads us to a really key term for today's story, gender dimorphism. It sounds fancy, but it's just the belief that humanity is split into two, and only two, distinct complementary genders. You know, male and female. It's this perfect, idealized model our whole world is kind of built on. So definitely keep that concept in your back pocket, because our myth is about to blow it wide open. All right, let's get to the main event. We're heading back in time about 2,000 years to the Roman poet Ovid and his epic work, The Metamorphoses. In it, he tells this absolutely wild story of a transformation, a change so complete that it literally creates a new kind of person, someone who lives right in that space between the neat boxes. So meet our hero, Hermaphroditus, and his name alone tells you a lot. It's a mashup of his parents, Hermes, the messenger god, and Aphrodite, the goddess of love. And Ovid makes it super clear from the get-go that you could see both of them in his face. He had this incredible blend of what they call masculine and feminine beauty. So Hermaphroditus is out exploring and comes across this beautiful, clear pool. And living there is a nymph, Salmacis. Now, she's not your typical nymph. You know, the others are all off hunting with the goddess Diana. Not Salmacis. Nope. She's all about taking care of herself, admiring her own beauty, using the water like a mirror. And the second she lays eyes on Hermaphroditus, she is just completely overcome with desire. Ovid's Latin is pretty direct. She decided she had to have him. So she goes right up to him, declares her love, and the poor kid, who's young and hasn't seen much of the world, just blushes and tells her to get lost. So he thinks she's left, and he decides to go for a swim in this amazing pool. And this is where things get intense and pretty violent. Salmacis jumps out of her hiding spot and ambushes him. Ovid uses all these crazy images. She wraps around him like a snake or an octopus or ivy climbing a tree. And what's so striking here is the total role reversal. She's the aggressor. She's the powerful dominant one, a role that, in these old myths, almost always went to the guys. In the middle of this struggle, she screams out a prayer to the gods. Let us never be separated. And, well, her prayer gets answered. Literally. Their two bodies begin to fuse together into one. The metaphor Ovid uses is just stunning. It's like grafting a young branch onto a tree, where you watch two separate things slowly become a single organism. And what's left is one being. No longer two people. Not really a man, not really a woman, but somehow both at the same time. Okay, so what in the world are we supposed to do with that? I mean, a violent attack ends with two people literally melting into one being. Is that a tragedy? A miracle? Is it supposed to be a warning? Ovid, in classic Ovid fashion, doesn't really tell us. He just leaves it hanging there for us to figure out.
And this is where the story really splits, like a fork in the road. You can go down one path and see it as a story of lack. The new creature is called a semiver, a half-man, something less than whole, something weakened. And that reading definitely props up old Roman ideas about what a real man should be. But you can take the other path, and on that path, it's a story of plenitude, of abundance. It's this powerful, violent, but powerful metaphor for our deep desire to be whole, for creating something totally new, a third way of being that's beyond the usual boxes.
And that right there is why a story from 2 millennia ago can hit so close to home today. The struggle, this ancient argument over how to understand a body that just doesn't fit the molds, that's a conversation we are absolutely still having. And it's not academic. It's happening in very, very real ways. You can see how Ovid's myth connects so powerfully with modern conversations about intersex people. Folks whose bodies naturally have variations that don't fit neatly into those strict male or female boxes. The myth almost feels like this ancient cultural script for an experience that for so long has been either totally ignored or treated like a medical problem that needs to be fixed. The writer Ian Moreland has a really sharp take on this. He points out that when doctors perform surgery on intersex babies, it's not always about the child's physical health. He calls it a significatory fix. That's a powerful phrase. It's an operation done to make the body, to make it easier for the rest of us to understand, to make it more readable in a world that only wants to see 2 options. It's about forcing a complex reality into a simple story. But what if we just flipped the whole script? The philosopher Georges Canguilhem had this amazing, game-changing idea. He said, what if being different from the norm isn't a problem? What if it's not a sickness, not something broken that needs fixing? What if instead it's the very source of creativity, the actual engine that drives us toward inventing something totally new? And that brings us to our final question. Ovid's myth is messy, it's violent, it's complex, but maybe its ultimate power is right here. Could this ancient story help us see difference not as some kind of ambiguity that needs to be fixed, but as Canguilhem put it, as an inventor on the road to new forms?